Continuing to keep you updated on the Mica Miller case. And wow, we have a lot to get into with this update because we not only have John Paul Part 5 video, but also, and this came out shortly before I was getting ready to come on here and give you guys the latest, but now we even have a 6th video that has been released, but a little bit different than how John Paul has been releasing these videos through TikTok. They've been coming out mainly in the late night hours. So we're going to talk about how, this one was formatted and how that one came out. So a little bit more extra information here that I'm going to be providing for you that I didn't, know beforehand. So kind of glad in a sense that I waited and then I saw this come out. So we're going to get into that as well. But what are we going to cover here from JP? Well, he is now addressing the bruises that were on Mica's body. Of course, this was according to Mica's family. If you remember, in the funeral home, they were taking pictures and they were taking videos. And, the family gave interviews and said, they couldn't even really properly mourn their sister, their daughter, because they had to be investigators, again, taking pictures, taking video, and, they had even asked the medical examiner about the bruises, and the medical examiner said, what bruises? Remember, they right in the funeral home, they saw it on the arms, on the hands, and they knew that the body was going to be cremated, so they had no choice. They had to have this stuff documented, right? Now, I would only assume, and I would hope that those pictures and video are, in the hands now of the FBI as they continue on with this investigation. But what did John Paul Miller have to say about these bruises? Well, we're going to talk about that because it was very interesting. And also, some more details for you on the cremation papers that were not previously reported. Of course, I covered in a previous video, JP had said and claimed that he did not force Mica's family in any way to sign these papers. He even claimed that he was surprised that they signed them, but he agreed that it was the right thing to do in the way that Mica had died, which is very telling to me in the way that he worded that. But also, now, in what is the 6th video, again, just recently dropped, and I'm going to tell you who got a copy of it and shared it, but now JP is addressing, as he calls it, 3 Francis fibs about him. Remember, all these videos have really been taking aim at the Francis family, okay? And JP said from the very beginning, with video number 1 that he put out on Sunday, June 9th, that every night he would be debunking another lie, right? And he's putting out these 1 to 2 minute videos. He's posing with Spider-Man, the Spider-Man costume, the Back to the Future shirt. He's driving around in his DeLorean. I mean, sometimes I think the guy thinks he's a superhero, honestly. Or he wants to be in a movie. He's from that, that generation where, Back to the Future was really popular, back in the 80s and, all this. He loves Comic-Con stuff and everything. So I think he thinks he's a legit superhero. And he's the one that's the hero and is fighting the bad guys. But in reality, he's the villain in this story. But he addresses 3 specific instances that he calls the Francis fibs, which he says is freaking ridiculous. Even makes a reference to Jerry Springer. I will get into why he said that because it was interesting how that all came about. So we're going to cover all of that and so much more. Look, I got my coffee. I don't know about you guys. We've been talking about this on previous Mica updates where, you guys will let me know what you're drinking, what you're snacking on. Like, I got my vanilla Americano. I'm ready. I'm hyped. I'm ready to go. So let's get into it. But before we even do, I want to welcome all of you to Not By Sight News. Yes, a blind Christian guy here reporting to you, reminding you as always that we walk by faith, not by sight. For someone like me, that's kind of my only option. Speaking of that, for those interested, you want to know my story. How did I go blind? How do I operate my entire ministry without being able to see? I made a video that explains it all. You'll find a link to that in the description section of all my videos. And if you really enjoy and appreciate the work I do here, and you would like to contribute to my ministry with a donation, you can do that a few different ways. One, by just hitting the super thanks button on the YT video, or you can join the Patreon for as little as $5 a month, patreon.com/notbysightnews. Link in the description. Hey, do you guys want to get access to all of these videos before they hit the main YT platform? Well, when you join the Patreon, that's exactly what you are going to get, along with a bunch of other cool features. I hope you'll check it out and join me over there. Again, It's patreon.com/notbysightnews. Big thank you to everybody already contributing and those thinking of doing so. Thank you as well. Your generosity is greatly appreciated. All right, let's get into video number 5. I told you, video number 6 has now come out too. We're going to talk about that, but let me first start with 5. I want to kind of try and stay in order here if I can. But video number 5 was released. This would have been on a Thursday evening, June 13th. Now, JP has been utilizing a TikTok platform. It's a newer TikTok platform. I believe it's called True Crimery, I believe it's called. And so a lot of people have been wondering why he has chosen to go with this particular creator, especially since, they're newer. They don't have as many followers as some of the larger platforms. And so many are saying that, why wouldn't he want to go, with a much bigger platform where he can, get his story out there. More people will be watching, more eyes on it. And it may just be that, maybe he doesn't feel that what he has to say is actually going to change enough minds to take his side. And so he wants to kind of start off with a smaller platform and just kind of test the waters and see how these videos are being received there. And then eventually maybe go to a bigger platform. But speaking of that bigger platform, we'll get to that coming up when we talk about video number 6. Again, I hope you got your coffee and your snacks ready for this one, all right? So, again, he's been using, up through the first 5 videos. Now, he may still be putting out, and I don't know 100% for sure, he may also have shared video number 6 with True Crimery as well. I'm not on TikTok, so I don't know. I don't follow TikTok channels. I hear from some that are also on YouTube, which is what I primarily use for myself personally. So it may be that it also ends up going over there too. But anyway, that is where he's been, primarily, at least through the first 5 videos, have been putting up on this True Crimery channel on TikTok. So what did he put out? Well, video number 5 was addressing the bruises on Mica Miller. This is very important because, what the family had said is that they had seen bruises on Mica's arms and her hands when they went to go see her body in the funeral home. Now, when they asked the medical examiner in North Carolina about this, when they said, hey, what did you think about the bruises? And they said, what bruises? Which is very strange. Now, you don't just have one member of Mica's family talking about the bruises. You have all of them that were there, right? Michael, Francis, all of them, Sierra, Destiny, all the Anna, right? All the sisters that were there with Michael, and I believe the brother as well, had seen this. So why would they lie about that? Okay. Now they even had asked, can the body, because look, they wanted to ask an honest question. They said, look, can a body bruise after the heart stops? And they were told no, that it can't. So they weren't even immediately coming out and saying, oh, well, she was for sure. Something happened to her. Someone grabbed her and the bruises were from that. They weren't even necessarily claiming that at all. I thought they were asking very good, intelligent questions and trying to get to the bottom of this. But they were denied. The medical examiner said, nope, it can't happen. And, we didn't see any bruises. So how is it then that she had them in the funeral home? Okay. JP addressed that in video number 5, where he said that there were no bruises. Okay. Now, of course he's going to say that, right? I mean, did you think he was going to come out and actually say, oh yeah, the Francis family is right? No, this is all about, messing with the Francis family, calling them liars, trying to point the blame at them for the reason that Mica is no longer here. But this is how he elaborated on this. This time, by the way, in video number 5, he was driving around. He's always been doing something different in all the videos. He's been in a different location. I think in video 4, he was, just kind of, parked in one of his vehicles. And he's been kind of titling them different too, calling them like video 4A, then 4B. I'm just going in order of the way that they're coming out. So I'm calling this one video number 5. So he says that he has multiple sources now that confirm that there were no bruises. So JP is using himself as one source. Robeson County, he says, also claimed that Mica had no bruises. Although I find it strange because didn't JP deny the opportunity to meet with the Robeson County Sheriff's Department once, they made the announcement and determined that Mica had taken her own life? Remember, Mica's family met with Robeson County, but JP declined to do so. So at what point is my question, because, we got to call these things out. At what point did he speak with Robeson County to where they told him that there were no bruises on Mica? Just a little something interesting to throw out there that I was curious about. He claims, again, that he's using the medical examiner as another, source here that says, again, no bruises on Mica. And then he was using the funeral home by saying that they saw no bruises on Mica. So apparently the funeral home says no bruises. Mica's family says, yes, there were bruises. JP also went on to say that they had to get, the body, washed and prepared, and that they put Mica in these pajamas and everything. And all the while that they were doing this and they were caring for the body, again, no bruises found anywhere on her at all. And he was saying, can somebody please help me, answer this question? Why in the world will they make these claims that, there were bruises here? And the cremation thing, remember, he addressed that in which I'm going to mention something about that here in a second. He talked about how he didn't force them to sign anything, and that, he invited them to come down at 12 o'clock. But then when they got there, the funeral director had said that, well, they can't be there until 2 because JP is there, and they didn't want any sort of a confrontation. And the family has said this is just all a part of JP messing with them. That is how they have felt throughout this entire process. And when JP says that he was shocked that they signed the cremation papers, but he agreed with it and said that it was the best method for Mica to go for the way that she died. Now, did you catch that? See, I caught that. And I didn't hear a lot of other people mentioning that. But when he says the cremation was the best process for this to be taken care of because of the way that she died. So if we are assuming, and if we are going based off what this death has been ruled as they are saying that she took her own life, why would it be that cremation would be the best option? It seems to me like it would be the worst option, right? Because you would want to have an autopsy done. You would want to look more into what actually happened because this was very suspicious, right? All of these questions were raised. But no, JP says that, in fact, that it was probably the best decision to have that done. And, he talks about how, the body will start to smell after 3 days, and the national average is 3 days to cremate a body, and hers was cremated within 6 days, okay? Now, let me mention something else about these cremation papers, because this was something interesting that was brought out here. The funeral home knew about the rocky background between both Mica and John Paul. And because of that, yes, there were papers that were drawn up. However, it was not in the way that JP had portrayed it to be. According to the family, he took advantage of the situation of the paperwork, and he used it as a way to hold it over Mica's family's head. Now, because that they were, separated, and Mica had filed for divorce 2 days prior before her death, they needed her parents to also have a signature here on this paperwork, okay, for the cremation. But what John Paul did, what JP did, according to the family, is that he used the story that you have to sign these papers if you want to see her body again. Okay, putting it on, basically, on him, using it to hold them hostage, even though, this was something that, they needed to sign, but it wasn't as if, they were, necessarily going to be denied from seeing the body. I mean, they had to sign the paperwork, but I don't think the funeral home was going to outright deny them from seeing Mica if they didn't sign it right away. See, he wanted it signed before they saw the body. Eventually, the paperwork would have had to have been signed, but I don't think this was a rule that had to be done in order for them to see her first. But that's the way that JP made it seem. And what did he do? He put them through all this, just all this junk, right? And we know about Mica's mom, that she was, shaking, and she was crying, and she could barely even hold the pen to sign the papers. But this is according to what the family, had said. He used that as a tool to mess with them even more, get them to make them say, you can't see this body until you sign this paperwork. And he held it over their heads, because that's what he does. Look what he's been doing with every single video that he's been putting out so far, right? Messing with the family. And again, I go back to what the press conference from Regina Ward, of course, Mica's lawyer and now representing her family, talked about these restraining orders and how, they can't be around each other in a public place. They can't come to each other's workplace. But also it talked about, saying nasty things about them on social media. And is JP not violating that by these videos here? I'm just saying. And here's the other thing too. With video 5, from what I've been, gathering from others that have been speaking about this video, because, I'm someone who can't see, I can't analyze it for myself, but from all accounts of what I've heard from others and reading descriptions, look, as a blind, individual, we have ways of being able to gather our research. We're not complete. We're not just, we don't just sit around. We're not incapable of doing things. That's a horrible thing that many people think about those who are blind, is that we just are not able to do anything and use other resources to gather information. And by the way, I'll just throw in another quick plug here. If you want to know more about that and how I do all these things, I always talk about at the beginning of all my videos, but watch the video that I made where I talk about how I went blind and how I, do all this stuff without being able to see. It's very interesting. I think you'll enjoy my story. And there's going to be people still that will say, well, you're blind, you don't know, how do you see? Because they don't watch these videos in their entirety. So, they're always going to say these things anyway. But yeah, by all accounts of what I have heard from others and what I have gathered from other information from, actual, write-ups on this video for transcripts, JP had like a vein bulging, out of him, and his eyes looked all crazy, like, I don't know, he might have been on something. I'm not saying that he was, but, he sounded like it. And there's all this sniffing in the video too, like just over and over again. So it seems as though, to me, he is acting as though he is this cornered animal. And at any point, he could just go off. And, I've heard from other behavior experts on this, and I'm going to bring this up because it's an interesting point. And then after that, I'm going to jump into video number 6 for you. And I'm not saying this is going to happen. So I need to get that out of the way first. But what many of these behavior experts have been talking about is they've analyzed JP. And look, we know about his history with his own mental illness, right? He's admitted to taking lithium and all these things. If he's appearing right now to be this cornered animal where he's getting desperate, and it looks as though, and again, talking about the platform on TikTok that he's been using, and the smaller platform, but still, the videos are still making their way around regardless. But it doesn't look like it's working. If this was a strategy that he was trying to implement to try and build sympathy for himself, it's not working, okay? In fact, it's probably hurting him even more and, making his approval with the public go down even more than it already was. So if he's not able, to build up that sympathy, is he willing to do something crazy? Is he willing to become so desperate to do something to gain sympathy for himself? Now, I'm saying could potentially happen. Would he? This is what behavior experts are saying. And they think that if something doesn't give soon, and they're talking about like within the next couple of months, if this guy is not arrested, or held accountable in some way, would JP be willing to do something to hurt himself in order to gain that sympathy? This would not be the first time, by the way, that we have heard of individuals doing this. If they get desperate enough, right? If we get a news report that something has happened to JP. Now, let me be clear. I don't want that to happen, okay? I don't want anything to happen to JP. I don't want someone to hurt him. I don't want him to, organize something against himself to try and build that sympathy. I don't want to see that, okay? Look, God in time, whatever he has done and whatever earthly justice that he may escape, and I'm not saying he's going to escape earthly justice, but if he does, God will deal with that, okay? I'm not going to wish bad things upon him in that sort of way. God will deal with that, okay? But many of these behavior experts are saying that, again, based off the way he looks, the way he sounds, the way that he's kind of huffing and puffing, there's that desperation there in his voice, and it doesn't appear as though his plan is working. So would he do something to potentially cause harm to himself? Would he take it that far to gain sympathy? It's an interesting question. And again, I'm not saying he will. I don't want him to. But with this guy's behavior, at this point, we really can't rule anything out. So it was an interesting thought, and I wanted to bring it up here and mention it. Now, let me get into video number 6, because, again, I wasn't expecting this to drop. And again, normally these have been coming out later in the evening. But Robbie Harvey, of all individuals, somebody who JP has clearly expressed that he doesn't like. And in one of those first videos, he called out Robbie Harvey and he called out JLR Investigates, two individuals that have been doing a great job on this case as well. He called them Robbie Stinky Harvey and, JLR Never Investigates. And if you remember, too, when he did that impromptu interview with Justin on TikTok, Robbie Harvey was, on the call. And JP said that he wouldn't talk to Justin unless Robbie dropped off the call. So he didn't like this guy. And there was allegedly a lawsuit that was involved between JP and Robbie. I don't know if that was true or not, or if that was settled. It may have been. But Robbie got this, and again, this was as of June 14th. June 14th on Friday, Robbie got an exclusive video from JP, okay, discussing more about, Mica's family. And that video, Robbie has now put out. Now, again, I'm going to take it back to what I said at the beginning. This video may still end up on that True Crimery channel on TikTok. And I don't know if JP is thinking now about using Robbie as a source going forward. We'll have to see. I will mention this, though, that because I was watching one of Justin on TikTok's videos on, this was on Thursday, June 13th, and he had JP's number, right? The two of them have apparently been texting each other back and forth. And, Justin had been, basically saying that, I'll give you tips on your DeLorean because, Justin has a DeLorean as well. He's like, but you got to give me something. JP wasn't really giving him any information and that they were going to potentially do this other interview. It hasn't happened yet. But at one point, Justin says that JP had asked for Robbie Harvey's phone number. Justin says he didn't have his number. So, again, that was on Thursday, June 13th. And here, we go now Friday, June 14th. And Robbie Harvey is getting this video from JP. So, did something work out between the two sides? He obviously that being JP, was trying to reach out to Robbie. And Robbie has been, fair. I mean, maybe JP didn't like what he was saying about him in the beginning. But Robbie had always offered JP his platform to, be able to speak, tell your truth. You can say whatever you want. So perhaps now something has been worked out. Again, I don't know for sure. It's interesting that he now obtained this video as he was calling it an exclusive. I will be linking that video, by the way, of Robbie Harvey in the description here. And you guys can watch that if you haven't seen it already. But let's get into that because, again, this was now I'm calling it video number 6. And he talks about here addressing 3 Francis fibs, okay, that he says were freaking ridiculous. One of those is that he says that at no point has he ever forced Mica into a mental hospital. And when I heard that, I laughed because, to even suggest such a thing is, to me, absolutely ridiculous. So he claims at no point has he ever forced her into that all of these decisions were based on her own doctors that had made the decisions. He mentions also, we're going to get to the upper surgery. I'm going to call it upper surgery for obvious reasons. And we'll get to it. We'll get to it here. But JP claims that all the times that Mica was in the hospital, at no point did he ever force her to go to those. What about the incident? Because I got to bring up the February 2024 incident because this is when Mica was involuntarily committed into that mental hospital. And remember that happened, she was there for 2 days. JP was going around getting all her things, right? Moving assets around. We talked about the alleged setup involving Charles Randall when he was going to be meeting Mica at the Walmart to, give her her medicine. And then that's when they had apparently grabbed Mica and brought her down to the hospital. But apparently JP is denying that ever took place, okay? That's what he's saying. We have our other thoughts on that. That's fine. But he's saying that never happened. here's something else that he said he needs to debunk. And he says that this was on an affidavit from Mica's sister, Sierra Francis, where Sierra claimed, now this was the first that I had honestly heard of this, but that Sierra claimed that at one point when Mica was in the hospital, that JP had basically, done the thing with her, if you know what I mean, right there in the hospital, getting it on, right there in the hospital in front of all these people, okay? That's something that Sierra put in the affidavit, which, if that's true, I'm not saying that it is. If that is true, that is absolutely disgusting, okay? But JP denies that happened. He says, what is this? He's talking about, what is this, Jerry Springer? This sounds like an episode of Jerry Springer. Yeah, well, with everything that's come out about JP, it kind of does. But even his own wife, Allison, his ex-wife, Allison, his first wife, had talked about, the horrible things involving the little ones at the church and, how, he would go around with Mica and pick up adult workers. I mean, just disgusting things, right? So JP claims that he has never even been, this is weird the way he said this, he's never even been inside of a hospital, okay? Although he says then that he kind of retracted and says, like, I meant like one-on-one with Mica. Obviously he says, I was there when she had her upper surgery, but there was like, 50 other people around there. So I was never, around her one-on-one, and I would never, take liberties with her like that in a hospital room. But Sierra Francis put that on her affidavit. Again, not saying that it happened, but I'm giving you guys both sides of what they're all saying here, okay? And I know, again, we have our own conclusions on this. So that was the second supposed lie, or Francis fib, as he called it, that he was debunking. Now the third one. He talks about the surgery, right? We're calling it the upper surgery for a reason. This was a surgery that Mica had back in 2017. We've talked about this now for weeks. And she had it apparently before the two of them got married. Now, if you listen to what Mica's family has been saying, they have claimed that JP had forced Mica to get this surgery. They have been very firm on that throughout this entire process. I mean, and unfortunately, then Mica even had complications after that because of the surgery. Remember, they were always talking about how JP, looked at Mica as a trophy. He wanted her to look a certain way, right? And if she didn't look the certain way that he wanted to in the beginning, well, then that's why, that he allegedly wanted her to, get the upper surgery. JP claims in the sixth video that he never forced Mica to get the surgery. But in fact, it was Mica's idea the whole entire time to get it. So it was all Mica's fault. It was her idea, right? JP said that I was surprised. I was shocked that Mica would want to get this surgery. But he says, for any of you who know Mica, Mica is going to do what she wants to do. Mica said that it was her body and that she could do whatever she wanted with it. So he claims that his hands were tied. Okay, Mica decided she wanted to get this. I didn't make her do it. It's interesting because it's just him giving, telling stories on his side. He talked about having all these pieces of proof. How can you prove it? You can't prove any of these things that he's saying. And he even said, because I didn't even mention this in one of the, I don't even remember what video it was at this point, because now we're talking about 6 videos in, where he talked about, don't believe something that I say just because I'm saying it. Look at the proof. You're absolutely right. We don't believe what you're saying, just because you're saying it. In fact, many say that, anytime your lips are moving, you're probably lying, is what many are saying now. So he's saying again that he never forced her to get the surgery, that it was her idea, and that this, her being hospitalized for that was another one of the incidents that, was not because of him. That was her doing, right? So it was either her doctors that made her go into a mental hospital or because of, the upper surgery that she had. And then he shoots down what Sierra Francis said about, how he was, trying to get it on with her in the hospital room. And he also says that, he's going to have more documents coming out about this very soon, as far as the visits to the hospitals and all that. He keeps talking about showing documents and all these things, but we really haven't seen that yet. And, the whole tattoo thing of Mica on him, many people have been saying that looks like a fresh tattoo. I covered that previously as well. So there's just so much here. And again, I have to go back to what the behavior expert said. Is this guy desperate enough to do something crazy to himself to try and build sympathy? I really hope not. Michael Francis was on News Nation as well on Thursday, June 13th, and he talked about, how these videos are just silly of JP and how, it's not really doing him any favors. And he's right. He's absolutely right on this. At what point, though, does this end? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that question. Maybe some of you do. I know that JP feels that, he's untouchable, like he's a superhero, right? And that he can just get away with whatever he wants. And thus far, he kind of has. But again, I always like to provide some spiritual insight here. You can't get away with these things when you go before God. And remember that leaders are held to a higher standard, a higher account. That's whether you're called to be a pastor or whether you pose as one. I truly believe that. I really do. If you are, instructing yourself or putting yourself over a church and you're preaching on, yeah, you can be a wolf. But if you're calling yourself a pastor, I still believe that God is going to hold you. Like, he's not going to hold you to a lower standard because he never viewed you as a pastor. No, I don't believe that. I do believe that you will be held to that standard of a pastor because again, why wouldn't you be? If you're deceiving the flock and you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing and you're living a double life, why wouldn't God hold you to a higher standard for that? So that's something that I maintain, but you guys might think otherwise about that. So that's pretty much what I got as far as this update goes. I may have a little bit more information for you as well, something else that I've been kind of looking into, so we will see. But as always, I want to hear from you on this. You can let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And again, if you enjoy and appreciate my work here and you would like to contribute with a donation to help me out, remember you can always hit that super thanks button on the YT video or join the Patreon for as little as $5 a month, patreon.com/notbysitenews. What I want to do right now, something I do on all these videos, let's end this video on hope. It's part of my ministry outreach. This is an altar call. I've been doing this on my videos since 2016. No matter what it is that I'm discussing here in the church and exposing the wolves, we always want to give people the opportunity to receive Christ as Savior. So that being said, for anybody watching now, if you've never received Jesus as Lord and Savior and you would like to do so, I want to lead you in a prayer to do that right now. This is a prayer you could do in your own words, but I will give you the steps you need to bring it before the Lord today. First thing you want to do right off the top, acknowledge you are a sinner. That is something that we all are. The good news is that God gave his only Son, Jesus Christ, to die on that cross for the sins of all the world, as he died and rose again for you and me. He paid the cost. What you have to do is repent of your sin. That means to turn from sin, not just to say you're sorry and then jump back to your old ways, but to actually turn from sin, which are those lifestyles, patterns, habits, behaviors, things in your life that go against the Word of God. If you humbly go before the Lord, though, and ask him to forgive you, he'll wipe your sin away. The Bible says he doesn't remember it any longer. And then you invite Jesus into your life to be your Lord and Savior. When you do that, you become born again, a child of God. You will have eternal life. Trust me when I tell you there is no greater decision that you will ever make than the one you do to give your life to Christ. And I pray you make that decision today. Again, more info down below. Thank you all again so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'll be back with more. You guys take care. Please be safe out there. God bless each and every single one of you. And I'll talk with you soon.